Okay, this is Dr. Mitchell again, and we're going to do an independent t-test using Microsoft Excel. And I'm going to show you two methods to do that. One is just using the function toolbar that we've used in class. That'll be the first method. And the second method will be using the analysis tool pack that you may have installed on Excel. Now, if you're not sure if you do, I have another video that walks through how to install that. And again, if you are going to install that, you need the downloaded version of Excel, not the cloud version. So let's go through the first way to do this. Now I have some data here from a vastus lateralis muscle, and then basically we have two groups here, two independent groups looking at the same muscle. And the data here is actually EMG, it's electromyography values we measure in millivolts in case you care. And so these are our values for group 1. And there we go. These are our values for group 1. And there's our values for, there's our values for group 2. So I'm going to do a t-test. I'm going to put my p-value, I'll type p-value, I'm going to put it right there. So I'm going to go to function. Now I'm going to type in t-test. Now I know it's on the screen there, but I'll just, hold on, I'll just type in t-test, hit go, and it'll find it for me. So there's my t-test. We're going to use t.test for this. We'll hit OK. And then immediately a new window is going to open. And so what it's asking is, first off, okay, we're going to do an t-test. Awesome. Let's tell us the first variable, the first array. Well, first one is my first group of data. So I'm just going to highlight just the data, not the label for this one, just the data. Array 2 is going to be my second group of data. And so I'm going to highlight those. Awesome. Now, again, it's going to ask for tails, and we mentioned this in class about one-tailed versus two-tailed. We're going to do a two-tailed t-test for this, and so if you'll notice on the instructions here, it says if you're going to do a two-tailed distribution, you type in the number 2. So for tails, I'll type in two tails. And now it wants to know what type. And so here, again, I said we're going to do an independent t-test, independent. So what I need to do is look at my options for type. Number 1 is for paired, which is dependent, so it's a little different. The second option is two sample with equal variances, and actually that's what we want. We're going to assume, and I'm assuming that my data does have equal variances. They're normally distributed, and they're pretty close to that. So we're actually going to go with 2 there for an independent t-test. So I'm going to hit 2. I'm going to hit OK, and immediately my p-value comes up, and so my p-value is 0.00703. I'm just going to highlight that right there. Now, what I need, my alpha level for this is 0.05. And so what I need to know is my p-value less than my alpha value, which is 0.05. Well, my alpha value is 0.05, and so yeah, 0.007, my p-value is less than my alpha value of 0.05. And so I am going to say that these are statistically significant. Or in other words, I'm going to reject my null hypothesis. Okay, so that's one way I can do this. The second method, and we're going to just, actually we can leave those right there. The second method is using data analysis. And so I'm going to go up to data. I'm going to go to the right here to my data analysis toolpack. And there's a lot of statistical options here I have. And so I'm going to use, very similar to what we just did, a t-test with 2 samples, assuming equal variances. And so I'm going to click on that. And in a similar way to the previous method, it's going to ask us what my 2 variables are. Now this time, what's different here is I'm actually going to include my title. So in my first group, I'm going to include my title, group 1, vastus lateralis. In my second group, I'm going to include my title, group 2, vastus lateralis. Now, the next thing it wants to know is, what is your hypothesized mean difference? Now, remember, we're using a null hypothesis here. So our null hypothesis is that the difference between these is 0. So pretty much all the time we're going to use 0. There are occasions we won't, but for most of our basic statistical analysis examining a null hypothesis, we're going to put 0. And then it asks, what are your labels? In other words, in your top row, do you have some labels here? Well, we do. We included the labels in our data. So I'm going to put yes to labels. We'll click yes. And then it wants to know our alpha level. And so for this test, I'm going to use 0.05. Now, you may use different ones, but for a lot of the research, and the most common alpha level to use is 0.05. So I'm going to leave that the way it is. Now, the last thing I want to know is, so where do you want to see this? And so as I've mentioned, I like putting things in new sheets. I'm a sheet person. And so we're going to put new worksheet, and it'll automatically put it in a new sheet for us. And so we'll hit OK, and pops a new sheet. So I'm just going to make these columns a little bit wider so I can see them all. And what it has done, same thing as we did with our previous method, it's just given us a lot more information. So it's given us the mean value for group 1 and group 2, the variance, again, which is just the square root of standard deviation, observations in each group, 11 in each group, our hypothesized mean difference, which we told it, our degrees of freedom, which is simply just n-1 for each group. Then what we're really concerned about is our t-statistics and our p-values. The value I really care about, the only one I really care about, is this p-value two-tailed, right there, that p-value two-tailed. And the value it gives me, just like we had before, is 0.007. I'm just going to highlight it right there. Now, that value is less than 0.05. And so again, same value we got before. We would say that, hey, these groups are statistically different. Or in other words, we would say we reject the null hypothesis. So this is the second method to do that, to do an independent t-test. For the next video, I will show you how to do a dependent t-test.